Now, the next laptop I'm about to show you blew my mind. I wasn't expecting this. This came out of left field in some ways. Now, we're talking about the Lenovo ThinkBook 13x Gen 4 that I got a chance to look at back at CES, but it totally slipped my mind. I forgot about that. It's a super ultra portable, thin and light laptop that is not only gorgeous looking, the build quality is excellent. It's got a gorgeous 2.8K display, 3:2 aspect ratio, 120 hertz refresh rate, a 74 watt hour battery, which is unheard of for a thin and light ultra portable. That's going to be really great, especially if you need longevity. We'll get into the numbers and all that. And it's got a pretty nice processor, the Meteor Lake processor. You can get it with either the Core Ultra 9 185H, which is crazy if you think about it, on a thin and light chassis, or you can get the one that they sent over, the Core Ultra 5 125H, which was more than adequate. It actually performed pretty well here in the numbers. We'll get into all that and more in this review. So if you're looking at the MacBook Air as a great thin and light travel laptop, you may want to hold off on that and check this one out first, because not only does this check all the boxes, but it also comes in at a very reasonable price. We're going to get into it and more in this review. Hey everybody, it's Andrew, and this is my review of the Lenovo ThinkBook 13x Gen 4, brand new for 2024. Coming up. Now, before we get to the unit itself, I just want to let everyone know, in the interest of transparency and full disclosure, I'm not being paid by Lenovo. I'm not being sponsored by Lenovo. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own. Lenovo is not getting copy approval. That means they're seeing this video for the first time, just like you. Now, this unit is on loan from Lenovo, and once this review is done, I'll be sending it back. Now, one of the reasons I'm so excited about bringing this to you today as far as a review is the price. This has a starting price of $1,106 or $1,106, which is an absolute steal for what you're getting, as you'll see when we do the numbers, the battery life, the performance, everything overall in terms of the build quality is really great. Another great display from Lenovo here. And you can go up to a Core Ultra 9 185H. I don't necessarily recommend that. We'll talk about that later. Up to 32 gigabytes of RAM. It's the very fast RAM. We'll talk about that. A terabyte of storage, which is upgradable by the user. And you can also get it with a force pad. Yes, a haptic touchpad is an option here. I don't have that one on my unit. I have the entry-level unit, and I think for what you're getting here at about $1,100, it is an absolute steal. For those that are interested, I'll leave a link in the description below for more information and where you can buy one. Now, this unit has the Core Ultra 5 125H, Intel Arc graphics. I don't have the haptic touchpad, as I said. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And it also has 16 gigabytes of LPDDR5X RAM running at a very fast 8,500 or so mega transfers per second. That's the fastest I've seen so far because it is soldered in. So again, for those that are interested, links will be in the description below. Let's get this out of the box. Pretty impressive packaging here. This is very similar to what we saw on the ThinkPad, the Z series. So remember, we looked at the Magic Bay, and this is the light that we can attach. We looked at some of them back at CES, so I forgot about that. Nice to see that here. All right, so 65 watts. Pretty compact. It's going to be USB Type-C, and that's some instructions. You get, what is this? Copilot, warranty, yada, yada, yada. We know the drill. Now, as far as the build is concerned, you're looking at a rock-solid build, very little give or flex in the chassis. This is made really well. It screams premiumness. It also has a really nice color here, a two-tone color, lunar gray, and I gotta say, it's absolutely stunning looking, in my opinion. I think this is one of the better-looking portable laptops you can get on the market right now. Now, my favorite, of course, is going to be the Dell XPS 14. I just love the way it looks. This has got to be up there, though. This is that good in terms of the looks. Okay, let's check out the port selection. On the left side is a USB Type-C Thunderbolt 4 port that is full function, and you also get a 3.5 millimeter microphone headphone combo jack. Now moving over to the right side is a USB Type-C Thunderbolt 4 port, the kill switch for the webcam, the power button, which also doubles as a fingerprint scanner, and finally your third USB Type-C Thunderbolt 4 port. Notably missing, there's no USB-A, no HDMI, and there's no SD card reader. This is a very thin, ultra-portable laptop, so I'm not too surprised. So you may have to carry some dongles. I do like the fact that the USB-C ports are split up on each side, so you do get two on the right, one on the left. So that is a little bit more convenient than having them all on the same side. So that's been pretty good. Now, to get inside this laptop, it's actually pretty easy. All you need to do is remove the 6 T5 Torx screws, use a spudger or guitar pick to pry around the edges and get that bottom plate off. But when you are taking it off, be very careful because there is a ribbon connection connecting the battery to the unit. That's right, the battery cells are located on the bottom plate and not on the unit itself. So that one ribbon is connecting your battery to the unit. So you don't want to yank that off or rip that in any way. And so just be careful. But it's on pretty good. You just want to be careful on that. But once inside, you'll notice that the RAM is soldered into the motherboard, which is not a surprise here in 2024. The consequence of that is, of course, that this is running at the very fast 8,500 or so mega transfers per second, which is some of the fastest we've seen so far. It is running in dual channel mode, and you can get this with up to 32 gigabytes of that LP DDR5X RAM. I have it with 16 in this entry level model. Now, if you go with the Core i9, you can go with the 32. Now, one thing to keep in mind here, there is an upgradable SSD, and as you can see from the reads and writes, these are very fast reads and writes for what you need to do with this laptop. Now, one thing to note about the physical size of the SSD, this is the 2242, which is a little bit more compact, takes up less space than the normal 2280, so just keep that in mind. And finally, when it comes to wireless, you're looking at a Wi-Fi 6E Bluetooth 5.3 combo card. It is soldered in, not slotted in, so that means you cannot change it out. And I kind of wish it did have Wi-Fi 7 to make it a little bit more future-proof. But having said that, the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth both have been working without any issues, both working as you'd expect. But it would have been nice to have Wi-Fi 7. And I would have liked to have had an option for mobile broadband, say 5G, like we get on some of the ThinkPad offerings, not offered here on this Ultra Portable. That would have made this a killer feature. All right, let's talk about the display, and it's really, really good here. Now, it's not an OLED display, so just keep that in mind, but it is an IPS display, 13.5 inches, 2.8K resolution. That's 2880 by 1920. And yes, for those wondering, that is a 3:2 aspect ratio, the same as a Surface laptop and so forth. So I'm a big fan of the 3:2 aspect ratio, especially if you want to get work done. You see more on the display. You'll do less scrolling when it comes to web browsing. And I love the fact that this has a dynamic refresh rate up to 120 hertz, and that's going to give you that really smooth, very fluid experience that you get with that high refresh rate. And that is something I love to see, especially in an ultra portable like this. Now, when it comes to screen brightness, they're claiming 500 nits peak brightness. That's where you get it with HDR, and this is an HDR Dolby Vision display, which is really good. It also gets 423 nits in standard dynamic range, according to my measurements. Now, it also has pretty good coverage of the color gamut here, although it's not going to be quite as good as OLED. You still get 100% coverage of sRGB, 71% Adobe RGB, 71% of the DCI-P3 wide color gamut, 65% NTSC. It also is pretty color accurate, a 1.46 Delta E score. It has pretty decent black level, and of course, it has decent contrast as well. Again, for an IPS display, I'm really liking what I'm seeing here, that's for sure. And for those that are sensitive to PWM or screen flickering, good news, I didn't detect it. Again, this is not an OLED display, it's IPS, so no screen flickering detected here. And as I mentioned, this is an HDR display, so watching high dynamic range content in Netflix, Amazon, YouTube has been really good on this ultra portable. In fact, if you're on an airplane, you want to watch a movie, this is really one of the great grab-and-go laptops just for that reason alone. Yes, it is in a business line or small to medium business line, of course, with the ThinkBook line, but forget about that. Anybody can buy this because of the price point and this really nice, gorgeous IPS display here. Now, one thing to keep in mind, it is a glossy display, so depending on your lighting conditions, you will notice some glare and reflection, although not the worst I've ever seen, but it is something you need to keep in mind. And one last thing, it would have been nice to have an OLED display, as I mentioned earlier, but this, for an IPS display, is actually really impressive. So this is the camera on the brand new Lenovo ThinkBook 13x Gen 4 here for 2024. And this is a full HD camera, so you're going to get pretty nice results here as far as video is concerned. What do you think about the audio? Now, remember, this has the Magic Bay, so the light that's included in the box here, which I think is the only module right now that you can get for this. I don't know if others are going to be coming. I know I saw a lot of concepts back at CES, but right now I have the light on. This is it at the full brightness here, and then this is it off. So you can sort of see a difference. Let me put it back on. This is the first setting. This is the second setting. And then this is the third setting. This is the highest setting. This will allow you to get a little bit more light. Now, what do you think about this overall? Let me know in the comment section below. Now, because this is a Meteor Lake laptop with an NPU, we have the AI effects or the studio effects, right? So we got the auto framing. So and frame, and the NPU will be working this. This will not be the CPU or the GPU, the integrated GPU. And then, of course, you have eye contact. And then, of course, you have the background blur. Now, this is the standard blur, and this is the portrait blur. So if you have a messy background, and this will work pretty well here. Again, having that NPU certainly has its benefits for these AI features and studio effects. But I'm curious to know what you think. Let me know in the comments section below. Now, at first, when I saw the keyboard, I was expecting, well, really shallow key travel. I'm not going to like it. That's not been the case, actually, having used this for a week or so. The key travel is a little bit on the shallow side, but the tactility and the feedback were actually really good. So it made it for a very comfortable typing experience for long documents, emails, and the like. It also has a multi-stage backlight that allows you to get work done in a dark room and a dimly lit environment. And I like these smile-shaped keys we're getting on here. We've seen them before from Lenovo and some of the other lines as well. And we also get a glass precision touchpad that I thought was very good in terms of scrolling and doing all the gestures. Now, there is the option, as I mentioned earlier, for the force pad or the haptic touchpad. That one didn't come here on this review unit, but it is an option. So check it out. Link, of course, to the purchase of this is in the link below. But having the haptics would be really good on this. I would be looking forward to checking that out. But this one actually worked okay. I have no complaints as far as the size or the responsiveness. Just wish this one did have the haptic on it. That would have been great. And one thing you'll notice about the Hinges, they're on really well. I saw very little, if any, screen wobble when typing. That's been a pet peeve of mine, and I'm glad to see there's no screen wobble as far as an issue on this laptop. Okay, let's talk performance, and this is running the Intel Core Ultra 5, the 125H. Remember, you could also get it with the Core Ultra 9, 185H, although the heat that's going to be generated might be an issue. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But as far as the numbers here, as you can see in the Geekbench run that I did here, comparing it to one of its competitors, the MacBook Air 13-inch, of course, and the MacBook Air will have better single-core and better multi-core, and it will have a little bit less GPU performance, but one thing I will point out is look at the price tag, $14.99 versus $11.06 as we have here. That's a pretty big difference, about $400 or maybe a little bit less. And as you can see, the numbers don't warrant such a big price gap between the two. So for the amount of money you're paying here, you're getting a good price to performance ratio. Now, if you look at something from the ThinkPad line, the X1 Nano from Lenovo, the Gen 3 that I looked at last year, that is coming in right now at $1,500 or a little bit more than that. And again, and about a $400 or so difference between this and the ThinkPad. And as you can see, the single core was slightly better on the X1 Nano, but you can see the multi-core was better on this ThinkBook 13X, as well as the OpenCL GPU score, which was much better, almost double or so. And that is because this has, of course, the Intel Arc graphics, which are a big step up over the Iris Xe. And when I ran the Cinebench 2024 single core, comparing it to others in the category, it got a score of 100, which is in line with other Meteor Lake laptops running the Core Ultra 7, even 155H. Of course, this is the Core Ultra 5, 125H. Pretty impressive there. And then 674 multi-core, which again, more in line with other Meteor Lake laptops in the category. Again, we're not seeing huge improvements here in 2024 when it comes to the Meteor Lake in single and multi-core performance. performance, but where we are seeing a big improvement is in the graphics. The Intel Arc graphics here, which is run in both the X1 Carbon Gen 12, as you see here, and on this ThinkBook 13x. And as you can see, this actually did better, surprisingly, than the X1 Carbon. In fact, it was about 11 or so % better in both the TimeSpy and the Firestrike score. Pretty impressive. And of course, it's not a gaming laptop, but you can get some playable frame rates if you lower some of the settings, and that is thanks to that Intel Arc graphics. You could also add an external GPU thanks to the 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports that this has. But I wouldn't categorize this as a gaming laptop per se. Just keep that in mind. But good news when it comes to the thermal throttling. When I ran the TimeSpy stress test, it got a passing score of 99.4%, meaning it detected virtually no thermal throttling under load. And that's a good thing. And it's actually one of the quietest laptops, especially for an ultra portable, never going above 37, 38 decibels under load, which is hardly noticeable. It's one of the more impressive feats of an ultra portable I've seen in a long time. But that does come at a price, and that's going to be the surface temperatures. You will notice under load, it will start to heat up, reaching in the 50s on some spots here and there. So that is something you need to keep in mind. But when you're doing normal tasks in the balance mode, really wasn't much of an issue. In fact, it didn't heat up all that much. But again, if you're going to do things that will put it under load, you will notice it heat up. Never getting to the point where you can't touch it, but it does feel quite warm. So just keep that in mind. And imagine this having the Core Ultra 9 185H. The heat that would generate from that would be a lot more. I don't have one to test here, but from what I'm hearing, it does get quite warm. It does get quite warm here with the Core Ultra 5, don't get me wrong, but it'd be even worse, I think, with the Core Ultra 9. And here's a thought. How about this with the Snapdragon X Elite processor, which should be a little bit more efficient, or maybe a lot more efficient, and run cooler? That's something I'm pretty interested in. Now, good news when it comes to battery life. I love the fact that this has such a large battery, 74 watt hours in such a thin and light chassis, which is not something we normally see. And we're getting 11 hours and 29 minutes on the PC Mark 10 Modern Office test. I'm getting 13 hours and 16 minutes on the video playback. What does that mean? Well, you're looking at really good numbers here in real world usage. But of course, everybody's use case is a little bit different, so your mileage may vary. I also had the 120 hertz enabled, especially with that high refresh rate, you won't do quite as well. So if you lower it down to 60 hertz or go to the dynamic, you might see about an hour or so more on battery life. So just keep that in mind. It also did better than the X1 Carbon Gen 12, which had a 57 watt hour battery. It's a bigger device with a smaller battery. That's pretty interesting. And here's another thought. Imagine this with the Snapdragon X Elite in terms of battery life, especially with a 74 watt hour battery. I can only imagine the numbers that will come out of that. Again, we need to see actual numbers once we do get some units into the studio. But Lenovo, if you're listening, maybe this is a good candidate to move over to a Snapdragon X Elite or X Plus processor for that amazing battery life that we're hoping to see. Now, I've saved this to the end because I wanted to show you one of the biggest surprises and one of the most pleasant sounding laptops coming out of the Windows side of things I've heard in a very long time. This really came out of nowhere. I didn't expect this. 4 Harman Kardon tuned speakers, Dolby Atmos to help with the spatial audio, very good volume, very good mids, good bass. No, I'm going to compare it to the best in the business, and that would be the MacBook Pro. I have the MacBook Pro 14 with the M3 Max chipset, has excellent speakers, 6 speakers to be in fact, but this certainly holds its own, which is impressive in its own right. But I think the Mac is slightly better because it has a little bit more fuller, richer bass. But really, for a Windows laptop, this has got to be up there as one of the best so far I've heard. It's that good. Now, let's give them a listen. Okay, let's bring it all home. What do I think about the Lenovo ThinkBook 13x Gen 4 here for 2024? And there's a lot to like here. Excellent build quality, gorgeous 13.5-inch IPS display, 120 hertz, dynamic refresh rate, touchscreen display, 3:2 aspect ratio. You can get this with up to a Core Ultra 9. You could also get it with a 32 gigabytes of RAM, although that Core Ultra 9 might run too hot. I love the fact that you're getting that really fast 8400 megatransfers per second dual channel memory. Outstanding quad speakers. In fact, this is probably one of the best ultra portables when it comes to sound, even comparing with that to the MacBook Pro 14 that I have here. It's that good. But again, this is probably one of the best Windows laptops when it comes to audio. Love the fact that it has a 74 watt-hour battery. I love the super thin and light design. I like the 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports. The edge-to-edge keyboard is actually really good, although it does have slightly shallow key travel, but not a deal breaker by any stretch. The optional haptic force pad is a great option to go with. Runs super quiet. It's reasonably priced, and it does have that Magic Bay, which separates it from the others. The negatives here, it can run a bit warm under load, as we showed you. No USB-A port, no HDMI, no SD card reader. It would have been nice to have an OLED option. It has a reflective display, soldered memory, and the Magic Bay is a great concept, and it does have the Magic Bay Lite, but there are no other options, at least not yet. I know there are some concepts coming to market. Stay tuned. If I get some information on that, I'll pass that along. But I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this has got to be one of my favorite ultra portables here for 2024. They pretty much nailed it, and I can only imagine if this just had that Snapdragon X Elite, get a little bit more efficiency, run a little bit more cooler, and give us even more battery life, this thing would be off the charts. But even with this Core Ultra 5 125H, with the way it is right now, it's one of my favorite grab-and-go ultra portables for 2024, and I highly recommend it. So please hit the like button, please subscribe, please share this video. Don't forget to leave a comment in that comment section below. Let me know how I'm doing. Let me know if there's a device or something out there you think I should review. I'll do my best to try to make that happen. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and X, the platform formerly known as Twitter. And don't forget to check out my website, amdtechreviews.com. So until next time, this is Andrew, and I'll see you in the next video.